We'll get started. Okay, you guys all ready?
Yes.
All right, so why don't we get started, Jake?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our West Coast team. Happy belated Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful long weekend. Welcome to our latest Bold. Just as a reminder, if you can, please shut off your cameras and mute your phones. As I'm seeing some of you. Hi, Jill. Hey, Roxana. If you guys don't mind turning off your cameras, that would be great. Welcome to the Bold Spotlight. This is our last of 2020. And just as a reminder, the Bold Spotlight was created earlier this year as we went into quarantine to provide a series of inspirational conversations with external leaders and game changers from diverse backgrounds and careers throughout the year. And we've had 8 so far in 2020, and this is our 9th and final. And we've featured CEOs and CMOs. We featured De La Soul and Lily Singh. And today, I dare to say, we are going to hear one of the boldest stories of all. And, you know, when Tony Effick gave me a call, he's kind of like E.F. Hutton. When Tony calls, you listen. And with the creation of the Black and Brilliant social movement, he shared with me a story about a very bold and brave woman that blew my mind. And I think that you all will be very inspired today to hear her story and the story of the people that she has impacted. Before we get started, I would just love to give a special thanks to Tony and Lindsay Orozco, as well as to the Bold Spotlight leaders of Kim King, Andy San Miguel, and Jake Cameron for producing today's event. I hope you guys feel as inspired as I was to hear this wonderful woman's story and all of the people that she has paid forward to and the impact that she's made on the world. So without further ado, please welcome back Tony Effick.
Wow. Thank you for that, Chris. I really appreciate that introduction. And I just want to say, my phone's been pinging. I'm so pleased and grateful to be back amongst old friends and colleagues at NBCU. One of the things I want to say is that I learned so much at NBCUniversal, and I learned so much from people who were willing to pass it forward to me. And big shout to Mark Marshall and Linda for giving me the time and the support in my years there. So I won't forget that. But the idea of passing it forward is the essence of Bold, and I was lucky enough to work with Chris in the very first and early incarnation of Bold, and so grateful to have had that experience with Chris. And actually, the link between Bold and Black and Brilliant is exactly that. It's this concept of passing it forward. When you see people who have a light, who have talent, being willing to spend the time and the energy to pass it forward to them. And so when we had launched Black and Brilliant, when I got this note from Kevin Hungate, that just popped up in my LinkedIn, and he told me this amazing story about this amazing woman, I was duty bound to kind of grab onto it and start talking to Kevin about this. It's taken a while to get to where it's got to, but I instantly contacted Lindsay and said, Lindsay, you're a great storyteller. I need you to be a part of this. And thankfully, Lindsay leaned forward and made this happen. And then obviously Chris, being the action woman that she is, took this on to the next level. So super grateful for NBCUniversal for helping share this amazing story. So thank you for that. Over to Lindsay, and Lindsay, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Tony and Chris, for setting up this incredible session that we have today with really
one of the most remarkable people that I've had the pleasure to meet, Evelyn Booker. To get us started, my name is Lindsay Roscoe, and I'm currently the Director of Global Client Strategy here at NBCU, and I'm so honored to be moderating today's panel. I also happen to be a member of the Black and Brilliant advocacy group that Tony founded, and one of the reoccurring themes that we've heard a lot about within Black and Brilliant is this challenge around finding mentorship, but not even just finding mentors who can advocate for your professional growth, but mentors who can also appreciate the unique perspectives of the people that they're advising, especially those who may have come from different backgrounds than their mentees. And as Tony mentioned, this is actually how we were introduced to the story of Evelyn Booker. Kevin Hungate, who works here at NBCU, came to Tony with this amazing story of his mentor, someone who had really been a personal champion and a teacher throughout his career, but had also been an equally important figure to a close group of colleagues that he regards as his brothers, Leon and Cameron, who you'll be meeting in a minute. And having gotten to know the sons, as Evelyn calls them, and having spent time with Evelyn herself, we're just so excited for everyone to see firsthand how special she is. She truly is a pioneer and an inspiration. Having grown up on a farm town in Eastern North Carolina as the 8th of 10 children, Evelyn was taught from a very early age the critical importance of hard work, but not just hard work. Growing up in a segregated community, it was instilled in Evelyn that she would have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. So whatever you do, always give it 100% plus. And this determination and tenacity has been the foundation for who Evelyn is. She is fearless in a way that many of us will never know. In 1965, Evelyn and her sister Clara were the first Black students to integrate the Columbus County school system, effectively changing history at the young age of 14. But that wasn't the only time that Evelyn made history and really became a trailblazer. After 6 months of working as an assistant at WRAL-TV, she wrote a letter to management listing 10 reasons why she could and should be their next salesperson, and won the position, becoming the first Black woman to sell television at WARL. And then she went on to be named Salesperson of the Year 4 times and Salesperson of the Month 16 times, which is more than anyone in the station's history. And from there, she was deservedly promoted to general sales manager at Fox TV, becoming the first Black female manager, where her team, unsurprisingly, broke all sales records existing at the time. She's now retired and a proud mother of 2 daughters and grandmother to 4 grandchildren. And she's also fulfilled her dream of becoming a writer, having recently written a book detailing her remarkable life titled A Winner in Spite of, that comes out this January. And as incredible as Evelyn is, and for all the barriers she broke through and the records that she shattered, one of the most remarkable and generous parts of Evelyn is her unwavering positivity and her approach to teaching that's really evident in the relationships that she's fostered throughout the years. And so when we were developing this panel, we really felt like this could be a perfect collaboration for both Black and Brilliant and Bold, and that Evelyn's story really exemplifies the power of leadership and mentorship. And it's our hope that we inspire anyone watching today to think differently about the people within your network, and maybe inspire you to develop a deeper connection with some of the people in your life, because as you'll see, the power and effect that Evelyn has on everyone that she's come across that has really been amazing. So with that, I would like to introduce our panel, beginning with Evelyn Booker, the star herself, author, pioneer, mentor. And we also have with us her mentees, or as she refers to them, her sons. So starting with Leon Duncan, founder of the sports marketing agency Carries 3.0. We have Cameron Poston, Senior Director for NBC Regional and Local Sports Network, and Kevin Hungate, Vice President of Ad Sales at NBCU and the catalyst for today's panel. So I'd like to remind everyone to feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat box. And if you have a specific question for a panelist, feel free to use the @ symbol in their name and we'll direct it right to them. But let's start off by asking, I guess, the most basic question, which is, how do you all know each other? Cameron, let's start with you. Tell us, how did this sort of unlikely quartet meet, and how did you all form such a close bond?
It's a great question and a trip down memory lane. These people on the screen have been part of my adult life, the major part of my adult life. Going back a little bit before that, I've known Leon a little bit longer than I've known Evelyn and Kevin. All the way back to, I don't know if he remembers this, but Leon and I grew up in the same area and played baseball, and we didn't necessarily know each other that well, but when you play baseball and you recognize another person of color, like it stands out. So I knew who he was, and then we went to college together and took a class together in advertising, and we were part of a presentation team, and that's sort of where we really got to know each other. Kind of went our different directions in like the early career stages, but all came back together. What I essentially call my very first job. I met Evelyn Booker through Leon, got me in front of her for an interview, and I joined the team, and that's where I met Kevin. And so we are talking about 25 years ago or so, and developed this bond where, you know, Evelyn was our mentor and teacher. And then these guys here, you know, these warm, smart, amazing people, we developed a bond where it extended through family and each other's weddings, and that kind of friendship has continued to this day. We have a healthy rivalry, and we're competitive by nature, but all pulling for each other. And it all sort of starts at its foundation with Evelyn and sort of bringing us together and seeing something in us, because I don't know if we saw it in ourselves in our early 20s.
Yeah, I think that competitive bond is really strong. I feel like I've gotten a different answer for who met Evelyn first from all three of you. Everyone says they're the first.
I was hired first, just for the record.
Okay.
I met her first.
Yeah, true.
Well, I think before we dive too deeply into, I think, you know, Evelyn's relationship with her sons, I would love for everyone to get to know Evelyn a little bit better. And I kind of briefly ran through your bio at the top, Evelyn, but, you know, you have such an interesting story. Can you tell us about what it was like growing up in Nakina?
It truly was a rich experience. And when I say rich, not in terms of monetary or financial, but rich in love and care and giving. Lived on a farm, so everything that we ate, we grew on the farm. So all of our vegetables, our sweet potatoes, our white potatoes, peanuts, and if you all have not had peanuts, boiled peanuts, you have to try them. You'll never be the same. We could parch them.
You only bought 3 things at the store, right? It was like salt, sugar, and flour. Those were the only things that were store bought.
Yes, because we had cows. So we had our own milk, and my mom and dad made our butter. We had hogs, so we had bacon and sausage. And on Hog Day, the day that my parents killed hogs, we shared with the entire community. So it was that sense of community, again, sharing and caring. The beauty of all of this is that we still own that farm, and our oldest sister and her husband actually built a huge house down there. And we can go now and just rest. It's a vacation home. And when you're there, you can feel the presence of our parents. You really can. There's a warm, sweet spirit. And that's something you can't put a price tag on. They told us you have to, in order to earn respect, you have to show respect. So that's the thing that stuck with me for life. And hard work pays huge dividends. And as you stated when you were introducing me, work hard, you can make a lot of money. You work a little, you make a little money. And you can't survive nowadays without money. And someone said to my mom once, well, money isn't everything. And she said, no, but it's right up there close to oxygen. So you can't get along without it. The other thing is they taught us to believe in yourself, to learn, to study, to learn, because what you get here, nobody can take from you in that human computer. And knowledge is power. So this affords you speak, no matter who you're with, to articulate your points just as readily as the next person, because you're capable and able.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like, and even in conversations with you, your parents really taught you so many lessons about hard work and respect, but ultimately that was also kind of building up an inner confidence as well, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's something you can't put a price tag on. And that comes through when you're talking with people, your level of confidence, your level of conviction. And that goes a long way. I talked with you earlier about when you're interviewing, you've got 60 seconds to make that first and lasting impression. And when I interviewed Cameron, Kevin, and Leon, they really made an impression. And I thought, these are my sons I never had. So I'm going to pour into them everything that I can to make the best person I could possibly make of them. Of course, they had innate abilities already. So you just had to kind of polish them and get them on the right track.
Well, I think they came out great. I do kind of want to briefly touch on this, or, you actually made history in 1960. A little bit about that.
Yes, in 1965, it was the first year that it was optional whether you decided to attend the all-Black school that all of our siblings had gone to, or you could elect to go to the nearest school to your home. And my sister Clara and I decided, after talking with all of the people in the community, that that's exactly what we were going to do. We were going to go to the school next to our house instead of driving for 45 minutes one way on the bus and then 40 minutes back. So that was an experience that I will never, ever, ever forget. Our first day, for instance, our bus number was 1953, or 153, I'm sorry, 153. And when we got on the bus that morning, it was quiet, quiet, quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And then when we got to the school, people gathered and they started calling us names and just things that are unbelievable. But at any rate, the two teachers that kind of came to our rescue, and I will never, ever forget them. I'm still in contact with both of them, Mrs. Biddix and Mr. Boyd. So they kind of gathered around us in the gym, because that's where you started out, and they hushed the crowd. But the beauty in all of it was, after we were there for a period of time, we earned their respect. And it goes to show you that abilities or capabilities has nothing to do with your skin color. It's all brain power. So once we start taking tests and the grades were posted, 9 times out of 10, our names were at the top. So that really did hush the crowds, and things got much better. We were still there the entire year. And then the second year, of course, more Blacks started coming. And that certainly lessened our load quite a bit.
I mean, I'm just trying to think about that experience and trying to imagine what it would have been like to have been in your shoes at, even at the age of 14. Where did you, I think, find this, I guess, confidence to even kind of approach that kind of a situation at such a young age?
Well, our parents taught us early on that as people of color, they said Blacks back then, or Negroes, we have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. So no matter what you're doing, and they would label Black people. So you get up, my mom said, get up, dress up, and show up. And as Blacks, don't ever call in on a Monday or Friday and you're sick. You make an appearance, and if you have to leave, you do, but get there, get up, dress up, and show up. And teaching us, instilling in us that you're just as good, if not better, than the next person. Believing in yourself gave me the confidence that no matter what, and I was very tiny at that time, So I was bold and didn't take any mess from anybody. So one day, one little boy said, well, we don't want you niggers here. And I said, first of all, we're not niggers. We're Evelyn and Clara, and we don't want to be here any more than you want us here. But guess what? We're here to stay. So get used to it. So I would speak my mind because, our parents told us you're just as good, if not better. So I'm just as good as you are. So don't tell me where I can or can't go. So having that confidence, knowing that you're filling your head with the right stuff, nobody can take that from you.
Mm. And I think what's so incredible too about your story is that this wasn't even the first time, you became the first, and the first time you broke down barriers. I mean, you started working at Capital Broadcasting in 1980, and I think that that's such a great story as well. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yes, in 1980, I've always wanted to write. So after we had our second child, I told my husband I cannot go back to work after 3 months like I did with our first. I need to stay out for at least a year. Being a female, your body just is not in shape after 3 months. So I stayed home and kept looking at the paper. At that time, we didn't have computers, but I kept looking at the paper and discovered that there was a position as a copywriter at WRAL-TV. So I applied for that, and they hired me right away because I've always wanted to write. And after 6 months, there's something about 6 months. After 6 months, there was a position open in sales. And I interviewed for that as a sales assistant, and they hired me. So while there, I learned as much as I could about the industry, ratings and shares and huts and putts and all of the terminology. So once, when one of the salespeople had to be out with his daughter who was sick, I kind of took over and worked with his clients and did his make goods and the whole 9 yards. And everybody kept saying, you need to go into sales. We like your pause. We like your confidence. So after 6 months, I wrote a letter saying, listed are 10 reasons I could be and should be your next account executive. And they bought it. So as the old folks say, the rest is history, or her story.
I love that. I mean, I think that this story is so incredible just because I think, even within Black and Brilliant, there's this concept that we're kind of always, working around, which is, breaking through the middle. And I think that, you kind of have this really amazing story too about when you kind of went in and you typed up all your accomplishments, and your brother actually kind of coached you, right, in how to
Yes.
be in this interview.
Exactly. And he said the one thing you can do that will really knock them off their feet would be to ask at the end of the interview, if you had to make a decision today, what would that be? And would I be one of your top candidates? Why or why not? And he just kind of sat back and could not believe it, because of course he's supposed to be interviewing me, not the other way around. And he said, after thinking about it, you'd probably be one of my top candidates. I said, one of, and he said yes. And I said, well, why not the candidate? I've been here for 6 months and I've shown you what I can do. And I have letters that clients have written to the station about my performance. What do I need to do to prove further that I could be an asset to the team? And he said, really, I think you'd be my top candidate. So I was hired.
I mean, I think that to me, that's such a great story, not only because it kind of shows, the kind of ambition and confidence that was so innate in you. But I think that also too, when we're talking about Bold and we're talking about Black and Brilliant, I think Bold's mission is to develop the next generation of leaders, which I think it's so critical to tell this story, because it's your story of success, but it's also kind of how you leverage your own confidence and your own, just knowing of your abilities to be able to sell yourself, but also to kind of break through this middle. And I think, that's so important that we really communicate this piece. I mean, I'm kind of curious. So now you're at WRAL. Leon, what did you think when you first met Evelyn, and what were your impressions of her? I mean, how was she different from anyone else there, or?
Yeah, so when I first met Evelyn, you have to remember I was very young at the time. I just gotten out of undergrad, and it's one of my first professional job interviews. So you go to this interview, and your mind is racing, and you're trying your best to play it out in your head and to make sure that you're perfect. I recall Evelyn calling me to set up the interview, and thinking that I had detected a slight hint of soul in her voice. I wasn't sure. Mind you, we didn't have LinkedIn or Google, so I couldn't just look her up just like that, So, but I had a feeling. But when we came face to face, I was blown away. And this is around 1995 in Raleigh, North Carolina, which was not a very long time ago, but North Carolina times, like that was a long time ago. So to see a Black woman in a management role really blew me away. I was excited. I was downright giddy. And Evelyn being Evelyn quickly got me recentered, refocused on the task at hand, which was the interview, by just being the true professional that she is. And that was when I first met Evelyn Booker. I was blown away, and I walked away thinking to myself, wow, I could really see myself there. I literally saw myself there. I mean, to see another person of color in a management position, I had a little extra pep in my step leaving that interview, for sure.
And I think one of the things I've also heard from, all three of you is just what made her so different as well was her kind of like unwavering positivity. And she just had this positive outlook. I mean, Cameron, is that true to say?
Yeah, yes. And you heard it through some of the stories that she just told. I mean, it's just this power of positivity, this unwavering belief with these daily affirmations around positivity that she would just share with us. And you couldn't knock her off her center. And I'm sure I saw a couple of people pick up on, like in her interview, she was already closing. Like she had already identified the objections, started overcoming them, and then closing. So she just had this air of just I can all the time, and you feed on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and Evelyn, I think when we were doing pre-interviews with all of your sons and even with yourself, like this theme of positivity just kept reemerging. And what I think is so interesting is, you've had to face so many challenges in your personal and professional life, but this idea of this really strong foundation in having a positive mental attitude. And I'm so curious how you've been able to kind of maintain that, even given all of the elements that you've gone through. And you talk about it as being a choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Everything in life is a choice. You decide every day which attitude you're going to embrace for the day. And I'm a firm believer, one of them alluded to earlier, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right. And I always believe that I can. And that's what I share with the people who I try to help groom. I begin each day by reading the Bible and saying a prayer. And then I look in the mirror and I do affirmations. Today is going to be an incredible day. On my drive to work, when I was still working, I would pray and ask God to divinely orchestrate my every move and let something that I do today have a positive impact on somebody. There's a saying, if you want to have a beautiful life, spend quality time with people under 6 and people over 70. Now let that sink in. People under 6 and people over 70. That's huge. And if a negative arises, I quickly ask myself, how can I turn this into a positive? And when people would come into my office, and my traffic manager, for instance, if she was crying, I would first want to know, you know, what has upset you? And then once they start to unload, people just want people to listen. A lot of times you don't have to say a lot, but if you just listen, listen for, not listen to, but listen for, you can uncover a lot of things. And by the time they finish unloading, you quickly turn that negative into a positive. And you say, now, I understand that, but let's take a look at what you do have. You're healthy. You've got the activity of your limbs. You're here at work, which means you're employed. You got to work this morning because you had a car and you had gas and you had eyesight. So when you think of all of the positive connotations that come with just being present, that negative has already turned into a positive. And that's what I like to do. And I also like to treat people the way I'd like to be treated. So when I had two people, Heather and Kendall, before I hired Kevin, Leon, and Cameron, and they're still a part of our circle as well. And they're all good friends. But I would share these positives with them as well. And if you treat them like family, you think about it, you're going to do the best for your family. So when you've got people that are working for you or working with you, they don't work for me, they work with me. You're going to treat them like family, and you're going to only want the best for them as well. So the positivity has to come out, and they say success breeds success. So if I'm positive and I'm a positive force in their lives, then automatically they're going to become more positive.
I mean, Kevin, I'm kind of interested, like I'm just trying to think through what it would be like to have this kind of a person, working with and, having this, center of positivity and kind of like being introduced to these affirmations. What was it like working on Evelyn's team then? And like, what were like the tactical experiences of kind of being really influenced by this positivity?
Sure. I mean, so to know what it's like, I mean, you can see it. It was life-changing for the three of us and for many with Evelyn. Having this kind of wisdom and this kind of poise and positivity when you're right out of college. Anybody, if you can think back to your 20s, you didn't always make the best decisions. So we tested her positivity a lot, for sure. But she gave us the space to be who we were. She would let us make mistakes. I remember she used to write when we'd go into a presentation. It'd be very easy for Evelyn just to kind of take over, but then we would never learn anything. So she would write. I think she would write, actually, shut up. Is that right, Evelyn? I think to tell herself to be quiet,
right,
and just to sit there and to let us learn and let us grow. And that's the environment that we came from. And so we were free we could make mistakes. We could take big swings. We could fail. We could take risks. And all of that, she gave us the space to do all of that. And so that's kind of what has been, as leaders and as managers today, that we want our teams and the people that we work with to have that same kind of freedom. And Evelyn talks about family. That is so true. I mean, you see, she's our mom. These are my brothers. We're her sons. And I think that's how we all manage today, is that this is not somebody that works for me. I work for someone. We were a team. I care about you as a person. I care about you professionally. That all comes from Evelyn Booker.
I mean, I think what's so interesting too about like what you described and sort of what we heard from Evelyn is that there's kind of this conception that mentorship is it's more about focusing on the hard skills of a professional person and giving them those tactical knowledge of how to do their job better. But what Evelyn, I think, it sort of shifted the paradigm with and really kind of what had the most impact is that she actually mentored your whole person and taught you life skills about yourself, or maybe even trained your minds to think in different ways than you might normally have. And Evelyn, I remember one time when we were talking, you even said that when you invest in a whole person and really see a person for who they are, they'll always give you 100% plus, because you become co-invested in each other. And I think that's kind of really sort of the biggest takeaway that I've really learned from your approach and how you managed your team. I mean, do you think that was that a conscious choice, Evelyn, or kind of like a natural way that you taught?
I think it comes naturally because I looked at our parents and the kinds of things that they shared. And I have to give you a quick example. I went to New York once with the general manager and the national sales manager. And it was really my first trip to New York as GSM. And when I started my meeting, I gave them a couple of questions. You know, how many of you are on an exercise program? And I got about 50% of them. And I told them I'm more interested in their health and well-being than just making budget. And so I gave them a stress management sheet. And I told them when I come back in 3 months, I want not 50 to be on a rigorous exercise program, but 100% of you. And so I gave them that sheet. And at the end of my presentation, I finally got to the budgets and, you know, what they were going to be accountable for. But the one guy stood up and he said, Evelyn Booker, I want to let you know you're the first general sales manager to come and talk about our health and well-being. Everybody is interested in budgets and not just making budgets, but exceeding budgets. And he said, for that, we'll give you 100% plus. And I tell you, it made a world of difference. And that's precisely what they did. I mean, again, we broke all kinds of records, both locally and nationally. So it makes a difference when people know that you care. There's a saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's such a profound statement. And it rings true.
I mean, so this is such a great opportunity because, I mean, as I think everyone can probably see through this interaction, Evelyn has so many, I think, little aperçus of wisdom, Evelynisms, just because there's so many, you know, lessons and kind of little like phrases that she's coined that we've all been kind of or at least I've been very, you know, trying to collect as quickly as possible in the short time that we've met. But you know, Leon, there's this one Evelynism that we heard a little bit earlier in this panel, which is if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. That has taken on a special meaning for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it's by far and away one of my most favorite Evelynisms. And, you know, in my career, I had 10 years at Under Armour over brand management. I got to know some of the most accomplished athletes in sports. And one of the commonalities that they had between one athlete and another was just self-belief. Like there's just this level of self-belief that you don't find in the average person. Evelyn Booker instilled that in us on a daily basis. Whenever we were faced with challenges on the job that seemed insurmountable, she was quick to remind us that if you think you can or if you think you can't, you are right. I have 2 children, and you know, maybe 10 years ago, Evelyn retired. I'm not sure exactly how many years, it was a while ago. Evelyn retired, and at the conclusion of the event, the tables were littered with framed Evelynisms. And I quickly looked for my favorite one, which is, if you think you can, if you think you can't, you're right, which I have here. And this is sat on my son's nightstand by his bed. And, you know, from age 5 until about 10, our nightly ritual, I put him down to bed, I put my hand on his chest, and I would say, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, and he would finish it and say, you're right. And he'd conclude by saying, Royce Frazier Duncan can do anything. Now he's about to become a teenager, so he's keeping some really late hours. So we don't do that at night anymore. But, you know, some of the most special moments for me, heartwarming moments for me, are when I see him redirecting his sister with that same, you know, those same words of encouragement. And she's 4 years old, about to turn 5. So that we move this Evelynism over to her room, and I start that ritual with her. But yeah, it's certainly stuck with me, and it's a powerful message, and it's very meaningful.
And I just love too how you kind of even incorporated that into your career even after Evelyn. Like, you got some of the athletes at Under Armour to really write that out to your son and make sure that they, you know, he was getting that kind of positive affirmation from all angles. Yeah.
Right. It's a pin from a photo shoot we did in Vegas with Bryce Harper, Michael Phelps, and Jordan Spieth. And it says on the flag, it says, "If you think you can, if you think you can't." He knows the rest. Ironically, my son's he's not really big into sports, but he gets the message. It's funny, but yeah, his room is just covered wall to wall with baseballs and memorabilia with the same thing, the exact same message.
That's cool. And that to me also too, it really resonates that I think Evelyn's, you know, impact was also in instilling self-confidence in yourselves and really kind of changing that mindset to think that you can achieve anything. There is no boundary, no border that's, you know, high enough. You can accomplish anything. And that's kind of really been sort of like this pivotal key change in the trajectory of your lives. And Evelyn, I know that in conversations that we've had, you've also talked about how paying it forward is, you know, a really big, I think, philosophy that you have. And it's also the name of a chapter in your new book, if I'm not mistaken. So Evelyn, what does paying it forward mean to you?
If you don't get anything else from what I've said today, I want this to sink in. Success is not measured by your accomplishments, but by the accomplishments you help others to achieve. So I believe in paying it forward. What goes around comes around. In other words, if you treat people the way you'd like to be treated, it comes back. And I can already see that in my daughters, in my grandkids, the things that I shared with Heather and Kendall and Kevin, Leon and Cameron, and the list goes on and on and on. Those good seeds that I planted are coming back in my children and my children's children. I hear from people that you can be too proud, but I find that incredible. I can't begin to tell you how proud I am of these three gentlemen and the things that they've been able to accomplish, and to see the little things that I said to them that's made a world of difference. And I thought about, you know, if I could mentor people today, I'm too old now, but if I could mentor people today.
I don't know. I think you're going to get a lot of people reaching out after this. They're going to want an executive coach. You can make a killing.
Listen, and that's exactly what being a manager is. You're not just a manager, but you are a coach. You're an encourager. So if I could share with people a list that I kind of compiled on how you can prepare yourself to be the best manager, the best coach that there is. Prepare by being a lifelong learner. Be the best in your industry. Always set yourself apart. Find a mentor, preferably inside the company, but if not the company, but in your industry. Study your competition. You got to know what you're up against. Establish expectations. In order to manage expectations, you have to know what those expectations are. Document your successes so that when you get ready to present yourself for the next managerial role, you've got a list of what you've accomplished, how you can contribute to the team. It says documentation beats conversation any day. And keep your nose clean. Don't have those blurred lines, okay? So that there's no question about who you are and what you are. And always give 100% plus of your efforts. Help to groom others because success breeds success. And that would be my list to them.
I mean, it sounds like you really have such a playbook for success and for, you know, what that means and how to build confidence, I think this is a great opportunity to remind people that you have a book coming out in January, which I hope is going to detail all of these incredible lessons. You know, Cameron, I'm interested, how do you think that you have paid it forward? You know, you're now at an incredible company, and you know, you work with a great team. What are some of the ways that you kind of taken Evelyn's philosophy, moved it kind of forward in your own circle?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You get to a point where people consider you a person with experience and wisdom, and you know, it's hard to identify whether you have been identified as a mentor, but you start to see it come out in people coming to you for personal and professional guidance and advice. And a major part of what I do is the listening for, allowing people to talk, and we share. I think, you know, if there's any if there's anything that I can give to the audience, because I think a lot of people are looking for this sweet spot, like how do you find your own Evelyn Booker? And she's unique and rare, and so I want everyone to limit their requests, because Leon, Kevin, and I are not done yet, so we still require a lot of attention. But it is a giving on both sides. It's not transactional. It's not meant to be manipulated only to get what you want. It is entering that relationship in earnest. It is sharing. It is looking for the right qualities and characteristics in the people that you're reaching out to. Cast a wide net. Do a lot of what Evelyn just said, and talking to people, particularly in your industry, as you try to rise and grow. But as you engage and talk to people more, who they are will reveal themselves to you. And look for those attributes, those characteristics that Evelyn has talked about, that we've all kind of talked about, and what we saw in her and what she saw in us. And so bring that forward. But that's sort of what I try to bring to bear. I don't know if I'm having the kind of impact. I'm sure I'm falling far short, but I strive for who Evelyn is, and having that kind of impact on people, when, you know, we can sit here and, you know, Evelyn retiring at age 37, you know, it's a beautiful thing. But that's hopefully, you know, those are the goals and aspirations that I have for myself. And hopefully, you know, we can tell these kind of stories, the three of us and Evelyn, you know, 30 years from now.
Kevin, I mean, you're now in a leadership position as well. Like, what are your philosophies of paying it forward? And you know, same question to you.
I mean, I think number one, I think it's important as a leader is to make it known that you are open and available should anybody want to have a conversation with you. So being approachable is important. Being humble, showing fallibility, which, you know, I do every day. Being relatable. I think that's important as a leader. And so for me, I mean, whether I'm talking with somebody one-on-one, or I've been in situations where I've spoken to a room of hundreds of people, all passing along Evelyn's teachings. None of this is stuff that I came up with on my own. It's all things that I learned from Evelyn, and that you know, that I've applied over time and I've seen work. I mean, and you've heard her some of the lessons. I hope people have been taking notes. Of course, her book comes out too, but in terms of how hard she had to work for half the recognition, believing truly that you can do anything, and instilling that kind of mindset for somebody is incredibly powerful. Being positive, caring about the whole person, all of those things are so important. So that's the importance of standing out. That is critical. If I've always said, if you look around and you're doing the exact same as everyone else, you're not really standing out from the pack. So what can you do to master your current role, but then go above and beyond? And so everything you do, interviewing for a job, whether it's a conversation in the elevator, it's how are you differentiating, and how are you separating yourself from everyone else?
Mm-hmm. And I think that those, you know, Kevin, just to kind of echo what you said, those are so important as well, because those are really kind of the entities that really, I think, were the catalyst for creating, you know, groups like Black and Brilliant and Bold, to really make sure that we're finding ways to advocate for all the people within our networks and really kind of, create those support systems that can, make success that much more achievable. I do want to say we've been getting several questions in the Q&A, and I want to make sure that we ask some of your questions. But before we get there, I also just wanted to call out everyone at Black and Brilliant and Bold, and thank you so much for the collaboration in putting this panel together. There were so many people behind the scenes, from videographers to website designers. And I also just wanted to shout out that we have an accompanying website for this panel. We had an amazing historian, Dr. Rihanna Rogers, working behind the scenes, who actually wrote an in-depth assessment and did a lot of research about the history of Columbus County and Nakina during the time that Evelyn would have been growing up. And so it really just gives a lot more context and frames up the social dynamics and racial barriers, specifically at the time that Evelyn would have been kind of like integrating her school. And I think just having this additional knowledge just makes Evelyn's story that much more incredible. So I think we'll be dropping in the website URL into the chat box for you to check out. So big thank you.
Rogers has posted it in the website, so it's there for everyone to view.
Thank you guys so much. So we've been getting some questions, namely, so for Evelyn, you've been through so much change, throughout your career, personally, professionally. What are your thoughts on dealing with change, especially for people who might find that difficult?
Well, first of all, you have to be able to adapt to change, especially with technology. I'm just amazed that how your team has pulled this whole thing together. When you get to be almost 70 years old and you look at people your ages and the kinds of things that you can do, or people, my grandkids, our 3-year-old granddaughter can turn and select what it is she wants, and she plays it. And the other night, everybody was looking for her. She had had her bath, and they looked under the Christmas tree. She'd moved the trains off the train tracks, and she had her iPad so she could get away from everybody. So I'm just in awe of technology. But the advice I would give, when there is change, you have to embrace change. If not, you'll be left behind. So I'm forever calling our daughters and our son-in-laws to find out what I can do differently, or how do I turn this camera on, the simple things. But the biggest thing is we have to embrace change. And I don't know how much longer we have, but I wanted to just commend your team, the staff there, for the incredible, stellar job you've done putting this together. And a huge, huge thanks to Cameron, Kevin, and Leon for believing in me and for always sharing their successes, because, I want to say I am because God is, but he gave me the wherewithal to share these things with those gentlemen, and they've embraced it, and they've even taken it a step further. So when you read my book that's coming out in January, and the very first chapter is Paying It Forward, and it's letters from each of them, plus Kendall and Heather. And I tell you, every time I read them, I cry. And it's amazing for them to feel the way they do, but to be willing to share that. So it touches your heart. So thank you.
I think, it's so clear that your cup runneth over, but, Cameron, Leon, Kevin, we are, I think, all very envious of, the figure that you've had kind of like as the central force in your life. I think I speak probably for everybody saying, Evelyn, what's your number?
Give me a call. Got my book.
Send all requests. Send all requests to Kevin Hungate. He will filter.
That's right. I'm manager right now.
I'll filter 100% of them. Evelyn, we have another question for you that came from the audience. I think, you talk about having this very, or we've seen, you have a distinct way of coaching and managing. But, you know, your sons, did they have different styles? Did you have to approach people differently? Or did you kind of come to all of the people that were on your team with this similar approach?
Similar approach, but you really, every individual is unique. So what you do for one person might not necessarily work for the next. So a part of being an encourager is to treat them as an individual. So what rises here might not necessarily on this end. So the bottom line is, yeah, treat them as a unique individual and address the issues at hand. And that makes for a better person.
Yeah. And, you know, we're almost at time, but I want to make sure that people know where to buy your book and when will it be available.
It's going to be around January 15th. That's the target date. And you can get it on Amazon.com. It will be in hardback and paperback. So you have a choice. And I think you will find it extremely, extremely encouraging.
Evelyn, would you be willing to sign a few for us that we can raffle off? What do you think?
Public auction.
Yes, of course I will. Of course I will.
Yeah, I think we'll have an auction. We'll raise some money. I think that would be a good next step, Evelyn, if you're amenable to that.
Yes, indeed.
Fantastic.
Yes, indeed.
I can't even say Thanksgiving preceded this event, but I think if I had to rephrase my prayer for Thanksgiving, I would thank you, Miss Evelyn Booker, for being formidable, inspirational, and being such an incredible example of what we all should aspire for. And thank you to Kevin for being an advocate of Evelyn. And I think that is a beautiful twist on mentorship and a beautiful reciprocal relationship of mentor and mentee. And Cameron and Leon, what a pleasure to meet you all. And Lindsay, you killed it. You're a great moderator, fantastic job. And Tony, Epic, Perky, Kim, Jake, and everyone that helped put this together. Thank you for being bold today. Thank you for joining us today. And look forward to our 2021 schedule of the Spotlight. Maybe Evelyn will come and share a preview of her book. So
that'd be great.
Look forward to more stories.
I would be more than happy.
A round of applause, Evelyn, for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.